And now we have reached the next and final logical step. We are now, according to one of the most influential figures on the American right, in a holy war. The holy war is here. It begins. And that sort of rhetoric is, of course, exactly what ISIS wants. For if this is a holy war, they aren't some murderous cult or some fringe Sunni militia. No, if it's a holy war, then they are the representatives of Islam, which is why the president, at today's summit on countering violent extremism, was so careful not to cast the fight in those terms.
We must never accept the premise that they put forward, because it is a lie. Nor should we grant these terrorists the religious legitimacy that they seek. They are not religious leaders, they're terrorists. And we are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam.
But ISIS has had success in framing the fight on their terms, not just on Fox News, but also to some extent on the battlefield. Western volunteers are now joining a Christian militia in Iraq fighting ISIS, including a 28-year-old American veteran, U.S. Army fatigues, who sports a tattoo of Jesus in a crown of thorns. Another American veteran, Jordan Matson of Wisconsin, who fights with a Kurdish militia against ISIS, reportedly wears a vest emblazoned with the words, "Christ is Lord." Can you imagine anything ISIS wants more than a Christian-identified army lining up from Christendom against them? It only feeds their claim that they represent Islam in a holy war against the West, a narrative that helps recruitment and radicalization and gives oxygen to the very fire we are trying to snuff out. Joining me now, Nihad Awad, National Executive Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Mr. Awad, a holy war, does that make sense to you?
No, it does not, and thanks for having me first. Holy war is a Christian concept. It does not apply to Islam. Holy war has been used in the 18th century, and I think Orientalists and those who do not know Islam very well, they lack access to Islamic terminology, and they borrow from the Christian history and Christian terminology to apply it to Islam. There is no such thing as a holy war in Islam, because if you translate it back to the Arabic language through which the Quran was revealed, it says a harb muqaddasa, and I have never seen this in the Quran, which Muslims consider the revealed text from God,
right,
or the tradition of the Prophet. So holy war is just a Christian or Western label that is being imposed on what some Muslims do.
Right, but let's just be clear here. The idea of fighting a war in the name of God, whether that is Allah or Yahweh or Jesus, that has been something that Muslims have done, that at different points Jews have done, the Christians have done throughout history. I mean, whether it is called holy war, clearly ISIS thinks they are fighting a holy war.
Again, ISIS claims that they're fighting jihad, or the legitimate concept within Islam, and it is very dangerous. If we allow journalists and some media outlets or commentators or some politicians to give the legitimacy that ISIS is seeking from all of us, if we call them jihadists or what they do jihad, because jihad in Islam is a legitimate concept which is self-defense. It's like, you know, if a foreign army invades the U.S., we all, defend ourselves and we have a standing army. However, what ISIS is doing is in violation of international norms, Islamic theology, Islamic practice, and Islamic, rules of engagement. And that is called criminal, and it is called terrorism. So if we say the terrorism that ISIS is doing is jihad, or they are jihadists, then we are doing the PR work for ISIS, and that is really shooting ourselves in the foot.
We had Graham Wood on, I believe, last night talking about the piece he wrote for The Atlantic about what ISIS wants, that sort of talks about their own kind of theological conception, a religious group with carefully considered beliefs, he calls it at one point. I mean, this to me seems an important point here, which is not to say that ISIS represents anything like a mainstream variant of Islam, but it also seems to me strange to, I mean, the faith is sort of constituted by what people say they're doing, right? I mean, ISIS does claim they're waging jihad. I don't feel like I'm in a position to say whether they are or not. What they're doing is clearly ghastly.
You know, there's a popular saying, right? Saying so doesn't make it so.
Right.
So if ISIS claims to be jihadist, and we know that they are criminals and they are terrorists, then we should not give them that legitimacy. It's like, the Westboro Baptist Church, they think that they have the only view and legitimate view and interpretation of Christianity. Well, most of Christians will disagree with them. The same way we disagree with ISIS, and therefore we should not call them Islamic because they're not Islamic. And the problem I have with the piece of Mr. Wood in The Atlantic is he said ISIS is not only Islamic, it is very Islamic. And I believe that is giving them legitimacy and doing the recruitment for ISIS, which they don't deserve.
Nihad Awad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.